The champagne glass shattered against marble before Cordelia Ashford even registered she'd dropped it. Across the ballroom, through the sea of silk gowns and diamond tiaras, Duke Harrison Blackwell had his hand on Lady Victoria Somerset's waist. Not the polite, society-approved touch, the possessive kind. The kind that announced ownership. The kind he'd used on Cordelia 3 weeks ago when he'd slipped his grandmother's ring onto her finger and promised her the world. The orchestra didn't stop. The dancers didn't pause. But every eye in that glittering London ballroom had shifted to her, waiting, hungry, for the moment she would crumble. Cordelia's inheritance clause was simple. Marry before midnight on her 25th birthday, or lose everything to her cousin. She had 9 minutes left. 9 minutes before becoming the most spectacular scandal of the season. Standing beside her, barely noticed by anyone, was Adrian Vale, a man so quiet, society had forgotten he existed. He didn't forget her, though. He never had. If you want to see how far this story travels, from ballrooms to breaking points, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. Let's see where Cordelia's choice reaches. Now, let's begin where everything fell apart. The Ashford family had been destroying themselves elegantly for 3 generations, and tonight Cordelia was determined not to continue the tradition. Except she was absolutely continuing the tradition, and the worst part was knowing it even as it happened. "Miss Ashford?" Adrian Vale's voice cut through the ringing in her ears. Not loud. He never spoke loudly. But precise enough to anchor her before she did something unforgivable, like cry or scream or march across that ballroom and commit violence with a dessert fork. She turned to him. This man she'd barely registered at a dozen society events, and saw something unexpected in his expression. Not pity. Pity she could have dismissed. This was anger, quiet, controlled, but absolutely genuine. "I need—" Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard, forced steel into her spine the way her mother had taught her before the debt swallowed their estate whole. "I need to leave. Now." "No." Adrian's hand found her elbow, steady and sure. "You leave now. You confirm every vicious thing they're already thinking. You stay, you're strong. You leave strategically in 20 minutes. You're dignified. I don't care about—" "Yes, you do." His eyes, gray, she noticed for the first time, like storm clouds over the Thames, held hers. "You care very much. That's why you're vibrating with rage instead of weeping into my waistcoat." Cordelia blinked. "I don't weep." "I know, Em." Across the room, Harrison threw his head back laughing at something Victoria said. The sound carried. Of course it did. Harrison Blackwell didn't do anything quietly. He was the sort of man who entered rooms like he owned them, which, given his title and properties spanning half of Yorkshire, he essentially did. Had owned her too, Cordelia thought bitterly. For 3 weeks she'd been Harrison's betrothed, wearing his ring, accepting congratulations, planning a wedding for next month that would secure her inheritance and save what remained of her family's reputation. 3 weeks. "When did you know?" she asked Adrian without looking at him, watching instead as Harrison's hand drifted lower on Victoria's back. Several matrons gasped. Victoria's mother looked ready to faint with joy. "About Victoria. This afternoon. He sent his valet to retrieve the ring he'd given you. Mentioned something about a mistake. You knew this afternoon and didn't— I sent you 4 messages." Adrian's voice stayed level. "Your housekeeper said you were preparing for tonight and couldn't be disturbed. Mistress." Cordelia closed her eyes. Mrs. Patterson. Dear, loyal Mrs. Patterson, who'd been with the family since Cordelia was in braids, who believed in propriety and preparation above all things. Who would have turned away the Archangel Gabriel himself if he'd interrupted Miss Ashford's toilette before a major ball? "The ring's in my reticule," Cordelia said quietly. "I was going to show it off tonight. There's a jeweler's appraisal. It's worth more than our house. I thought—" She laughed, sharp and ugly. "I thought he loved me. He's incapable of loving anything that doesn't reflect his own glory." The certainty in Adrian's tone made her actually look at him. Really look. Adrian Vale was the sort of man society permitted to exist in corners. Medium height, slim build, brown hair that never quite stayed properly combed. He wore his evening clothes correctly, but without flair. Black coat, white waistcoat, simple cravat. No unnecessary jewelry, no peacocking. She'd probably spoken to him a dozen times in 5 years. Pleasant, forgettable conversations about weather and theater. and the careful nothing that lubricated society functions. But he was looking at her now like he saw everything. The rage, the fear beneath it. The calculation already spinning behind her eyes because Cordelia Ashford didn't have the luxury of genuine emotional collapse. "What time is it?" she asked. Adrian pulled out a pocket watch. Not gold. Steel. Practical. 11:43, I see. Warsaw. 17 minutes until midnight. 17 minutes until her 25th birthday ended and her uncle's will executed its final cruelty. Marry before midnight or forfeit everything to cousin Edmund, who'd been circling the family estate like a vulture since her father's death. Edmund, who'd already promised to sell the house and terminate the remaining staff. Who'd told her last Christmas, drunk on her father's port in her father's study, that women like her needed taking down several pegs. Cordelia felt her breath coming faster. 17 minutes. No fiancé, no prospects. Every eligible man in London watching her public humiliation with barely concealed glee. "I need air," she managed. "There's a terrace," Adrian said. "East side, less populated." Yeah. He guided her through the crowd with surprising efficiency. Not the direct route. That would have meant passing Harrison and Victoria. Instead, Adrian navigated them along the ballroom's perimeter, blocking her from view with his body when necessary, nodding politely to acquaintances without stopping. The terrace was blessedly empty except for one couple tucked into shadows, doing things that would scandalize their respective spouses. They scattered when Adrian cleared his throat. Cordelia gripped the stone balustrade, gulping night air that tasted of coal smoke and roses from the garden below. London in May. Beautiful and filthy all at once, like everything else in her life. "Breathe," Adrian said behind her. Not touching, but close enough she could feel his presence, steadying. "I'm breathing." "No, you're hyperventilating. There's a difference." "Ah." She wanted to snap at him, but he was right. Her corset suddenly felt impossibly tight. The diamonds at her throat, paste, though no one knew that, weighed like anchors. "Tell me something," she said, focusing on the garden's geometric paths to slow her racing pulse. "Why do you care?" Silence. Long enough she turned to face him. Adrian was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Would you believe basic human decency? From a man? At a society ball? No. His mouth quirked. Almost a smile. "Fair assessment." So? He hesitated, which was interesting. Adrian Vale didn't seem like a man who hesitated often. Let's say I have a particular dislike for watching people be cruel for entertainment. And Harrison's being cruel. Harrison's being Harrison. The cruelty is almost incidental. He doesn't care enough about you to be deliberately vicious. He just wanted Victoria, and you were inconvenient. Cordelia laughed, the sound bitter even to her own ears. Inconvenient. Yes, that's exactly what I am. Below them, someone had lit torches along the garden paths. They flickered in the breeze, casting dancing shadows across perfectly manicured hedges. Cordelia's father used to say the rich spent fortunes making nature behave. Looking at those rigid, controlled gardens, she understood what he meant. 11:47, Adrian said quietly. 13 minutes. My uncle's will specifies midnight, Cordelia heard herself saying. Not just the day. Midnight exactly. He thought it was poetic. Marry before your youth is spent, or accept spinsterhood and poverty. Generous man. He hated my mother, called her grasping and common. She was a merchant's daughter, successful merchant, mind you, but not gentry. My father loved her anyway. Cordelia touched her mother's locket at her throat, the only real jewelry she owned. Uncle James made sure the will punished that choice even after both of them were dead. By forcing you to marry in haste, or lose everything. The house, the remaining investments, my mother's settlement, all of it goes to Edmund, who will, I'm sure, be deeply sympathetic as he sells everything and keeps the proceeds. Adrian moved to stand beside her at the balustrade. Edmund Ashford, red-faced man, loud laugh, hands that wander at dinner parties? You know him? Who? But Setby. I know of him. He lost £3,000 to my brother at cards last year and tried to settle the debt with a horse that turned out to be stolen. Awesome. Despite everything, Cordelia felt her lips twitch. That sounds like Edmund. My brother was displeased. What did he do? Had Edmund's club memberships quietly revoked, spread word he was financially unreliable. Edmund's had trouble getting credit anywhere respectable since. Adrian's tone was mild, but there was steel underneath. My brother believes in consequences. Cordelia studied his profile. You don't seem like a man who comes from money. I don't act like one, you mean? Yes. That's intentional. Adrian glanced at her. Money makes people stupid and cruel. I prefer to be neither. Yet you attend balls. My sister-in-law enjoys society. I enjoy my sister-in-law. Therefore, I attend balls and make pleasant conversation and go home afterward to my books and my daughter and my significantly quieter life. Cordelia froze. You have a daughter? Claire, she's 7, sharp as a knife and twice as dangerous. His voice softened, saying the name. Her mother died 3 years ago. Complications from fever. I'm sorry. Nah. Garcets. So am I. Adrian checked his watch again. 11:50. 10 minutes. Cordelia's hands tightened on the balustrade. I should go back inside, face them. At least I'll maintain some dignity before the clock strikes and I lose everything. Or, Adrian said carefully, you could solve your immediate problem. How? Harrison's already... Marry someone else. The words hung in the night air between them. Cordelia stared at him. What? Your uncle's will requires marriage before midnight. It doesn't specify to whom. Adrian's voice stayed level, reasonable, like he was discussing theater tickets instead of insanity. Marry someone, anyone, and you satisfy the terms. That's... Cordelia's mind raced. That's absurd. Who would... She stopped, looked at him. No. Why not? Because I don't know you. Because this is insane. Because it's unconventional? Adrian raised an eyebrow. You're 10 minutes from destitution. Conventional hasn't been serving you well. I can't just marry a stranger. I'm not a stranger. We've spoken at least a dozen times. You know my name, my family situation, and that I own at least one watch. He pulled it out again. 11:52. 8 minutes, Cordelia. 11s. The use of her given name should have felt presumptuous. Instead, it felt grounding. This is madness, she whispered. Yes, Adrian agreed. Complete madness. But it solves your inheritance problem. You get your house, your independence, and you don't have to crawl to Edmund or throw yourself on Harrison's mercy, which, to be clear, doesn't exist. And what do you get? Adrian was quiet for a moment. A wife who's smart enough to understand this is a practical arrangement. Someone who won't expect romance or grand gestures. Someone who might... He paused. Someone who might be kind to Claire. Oh, that was clever and heartbreaking all at once. You need a mother for your daughter, Cordelia said slowly. I need someone who won't treat her like an inconvenience. The governesses and housekeepers are competent, but Claire needs... He shrugged, almost helpless. She needs someone who cares. And I'm not foolish enough to think I'll find that in the usual marriage market. So you're proposing to a desperate woman on a terrace. I'm offering a solution to someone intelligent enough to recognize one. Adrian met her eyes. I'm not Harrison. I won't make you promises about love or passion or any of the pretty lies society sells to justify its arrangements. But I will promise you this. Your inheritance stays yours. The house stays yours. Your independence stays yours. We'll maintain separate residences if you prefer. I have more than enough space. And in exchange, Claire gets someone who might actually give a damn about her welfare. Cordelia's heart hammered against her ribs. How do you even know I'd be good to her? Because you're standing here planning strategy instead of weeping. Because you came from nothing. Your mother was common, remember? And built yourself into someone society almost accepted. Because... He hesitated. Because I've watched you for 5 years at these ridiculous events, and you're always kind to the wallflowers and the overlooked. You see people others dismiss. You've been watching me? Someone had to. Adrian's voice dropped. Everyone else was too busy watching Harrison. The words hit harder than they should have. Cordelia found herself thinking about all those society events, all those pleasant, forgettable conversations. Had Adrian been there each time? quietly watching while she sparkled and charmed and worked herself to exhaustion trying to secure a future. 11:55, he said softly. 5 minutes. If I do this, what happens afterward? Well, we return to the ballroom, announce we've wed, 'cause the scandal of the season. Adrian's mouth quirked. Harrison will be apoplectic. Edmund will contest the will, but he'll lose. Marriage is marriage, and you'll have met the terms exactly. Society will gossip viciously for a few months, then move on to the next scandal. And us? We figure it out as we go, like everyone else. Nobody else gets married in... Cordelia glanced at his watch. 4 minutes. No, Adrian agreed. They get years of courtship and still end up miserable. We're just being more efficient. Despite everything, the betrayal, the fear, the utter insanity of this conversation, Cordelia laughed. Real laughter, not the practiced society kind. You're either brilliant or completely mad. Can it be both? She looked at him, really looked. Adrian Vale wasn't handsome, not like Harrison with his classical features and perfect smile. But there was something solid about him. Steady, like he was a man who kept promises even when they were inconvenient. And Cordelia was so tired of convenient lies. How? She asked. We can't exactly publish banns in 3 minutes. A special license. I have one in my coat pocket. Cordelia's eyebrows shot up. You came to this ball with a marriage license? I came prepared for an opportunity. Adrian pulled out a folded paper. It's made out to my name, but the bride's line is blank. We can fill it in, find a minister. There's always 1 or 2 at these events, and be done in minutes. You planned this. I planned for the possibility Harrison would be an ass. I know him. Adrian's voice hardened. We were at school together. He's been disappointing people for decades. It's basically his primary skill. 11:57, Cordelia said, her voice shaking. 3 minutes. Her whole life had been leading to this moment, she realized. Every etiquette lesson, every social grace learned and performed, every careful step toward security and respectability, and the future her mother died believing Cordelia would have. And here she was, on a terrace in a second-hand ball gown with paste jewelry, being proposed to by a man she barely knew, while the man she'd thought she'd marry laughed inside with another woman. If I say yes, she said slowly, I need you to understand something. What? I don't love you. I won't pretend to. Good. I don't love you either. Adrian's honesty was almost refreshing. But I respect you, which is rarer and possibly more useful. I'll want my own space, my own pursuits. Agreed. And if I'm going to be any kind of mother to your daughter, I need you to trust me with her. Really trust me. No second guessing, no undermining. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. You're already thinking about Claire. Someone has to. Cordelia straightened her spine, feeling pieces of herself click into place. 11:58, we're out of time for negotiation. Is that a yes? She looked back through the terrace doors. Inside, the ballroom glittered. Harrison danced with Victoria. Society swirled in its elegant, vicious patterns. Everything Cordelia had worked for, everything she'd tried to become, it was all ashes now. So burn it down and build something different. Yes, Cordelia said. But we do this my way, fast, legal, and calculated. When we walk back in there, we're united. No hesitation, no apology. Agreed. Where's the minister? Adrian smiled, a real smile this time, sharp and slightly dangerous. Reverend Bishop, he's in the card room losing money he doesn't have. He'll marry us for £50 in discretion. You've already spoken to him? I told you, I came prepared. Cordelia held out her hand. Then let's go commit matrimony. Adrian took it. His grip was warm, steady, and Cordelia felt the strangest sense of stepping off a cliff and finding solid ground. They moved quickly. Through a servant's corridor Adrian seemed to know well. I map exit routes at these things. They're useful. Past kitchens where staff barely glanced at them. Down a narrow hallway to a small library that smelled of leather and old paper. Reverend Bishop was exactly where Adrian said he'd be. Slumped in a chair, cravat loosened, cards scattered on a side table. He looked up blearily as they entered. Vale? He squinted. What are you doing down here? Getting married. You're officiating. Adrian pulled out his wallet, extracted notes. £50. Now. Bishop's eyes focused on the money. Now? It's nearly midnight. Yes, that's why now. The Reverend looked between them. Whatever he saw made him shrug and pocket the cash. Your funeral. I need witnesses. I'll get them. Adrian stepped into the hall, returned seconds later with 2 footmen who looked confused but willing. They'll serve. Das Patino Chamachesetam. Bishop heaved himself up, straightened his clothes enough to look vaguely official. Names: Adrian Vale, Cordelia Ashford. Miss Ashford? Bishop's eyes widened with recognition. Aren't you engaged to— She's marrying me, Adrian cut in, voice flat. Do you want the money or not? Right, fine. Stand there. It wasn't romantic. There were no flowers, no music, no family gathered in tearful support. Just a tipsy reverend racing through vows in a library that wasn't theirs, while 2 confused footmen served as witnesses, and somewhere above them, a ballroom full of society's finest prepared to watch Cordelia's humiliation. Do you, Adrian Vale, take this woman? The words blurred. Cordelia focused on Adrian's hands holding hers. Steady, warm, real. I do, Adrian said clearly. And do you, Cordelia Ashford, take this man? Her last chance to run. To say no, to take her chances with Edmund and poverty and starting over from nothing. But she'd already started from nothing once. She knew how to survive it. What she didn't know was how to survive becoming another society cautionary tale. Another woman who'd trusted the wrong man and paid for it. Another Ashford failure. This way, at least, she'd fail on her own terms. I do, Cordelia said. Bishop mumbled something about authority vested and pronouncement of marriage. Adrian slipped a ring onto her finger. Simple gold, nothing fancy, but it fit perfectly. Had he guessed her size or gotten lucky? You may kiss the bride, Bishop said without enthusiasm. Adrian looked at Cordelia. May I? The asking was unexpected, nice even. You may. He kissed her carefully, briefly, a promise of respect more than passion. When he pulled back, his eyes searched hers. Regrets? Ask me tomorrow. Cordelia glanced at the small clock on the library mantel. 11:59. We made it. We did. Adrian turned to the footman. Gentlemen, I appreciate your discretion. There's £10 for each of you if this stays quiet until we announce it ourselves. Money changed hands. The footman vanished. Bishop signed the license with a flourish and handed it to Adrian. Pleasure doing business, he said. Though I suspect you're both quite mad. Probably, Adrian agreed. Thank you, Reverend. They were alone then, in a library that wasn't theirs, married to each other, with 60 seconds until midnight and an entire ballroom of hostile society waiting above. Cordelia looked at the ring on her finger. Simple, solid, real. What now? She asked. Adrian checked his pocket watch one final time. Now we go upstairs and tell everyone what we've done. Harrison will be furious. Edmund will contest. Society will crucify you. Piquet? Mats. Us, Cordelia corrected. They'll crucify us. Us? He agreed, and smiled. Ready to cause the scandal of the season? The clock struck midnight. Somewhere in the ballroom above, probably, people were counting down, toasting, celebrating. Cordelia Ashford, Cordelia Vale now, legally, impossibly, straightened her shoulders and linked her arm through her husband's. Let's go, she said. They climbed the stairs together. Adrian moved like a man who knew exactly where he was going and didn't care who noticed. Cordelia matched his pace, her mind already spinning through the next moves. What to say? How to stand? What expression would cut deepest? The ballroom doors loomed ahead. Through them, music and laughter and the glittering cruelty of people who'd been waiting all night to watch her break. Adrian paused at the threshold. Last chance. For what? To hide. We could announce this quietly, through cards, avoid the spectacle. Cordelia looked through those doors at Harrison and Victoria, at the matrons already whispering, at Edmund standing near the refreshments with a smile that promised violence. No, she said softly, we're doing this now, in front of everyone. I want them to know I chose this. even though you didn't really. I chose you over him, over nothing, over destruction. She met his eyes. That's choice enough. Cool. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Warmth, maybe? Or recognition. Then let's make an entrance, he said. They walked in together, and Cordelia felt every eye turn toward them. The music faltered, conversation died. 300 people all watching, all waiting for the moment she would crumble. Instead, she smiled. Harrison saw them first. His face went from confusion to shock to rage in seconds. Cordelia raised her left hand, letting the ring catch the chandelier light. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice carrying across the sudden silence, "I apologize for the confusion this evening. I know there was some uncertainty about my engagement." Titters. Cruel laughter. Harrison started toward her, but Victoria grabbed his arm. "I'm delighted to announce that confusion has been resolved," Cordelia continued. "I'm married. As of—" She glanced at Adrian. "Approximately 2 minutes ago," he supplied calmly. More gasps. The orchestra stopped completely now. "Married?" Harrison's voice cracked. "To whom?" "To me," Adrian said. Not loud, but certain. "Cordelia is my wife." The ballroom erupted. The silence lasted 3 seconds before the storm hit. "You can't be serious." Harrison's voice cut through the shocked quiet like breaking glass. He'd pushed Victoria aside, literally pushed her, which earned gasps from the matrons, and was stalking toward them with murder in his eyes. "This is some kind of joke." "No joke." Adrian's hand settled on the small of Cordelia's back. Proprietary but not possessive. Steadying, married, legal, binding. You absolute... Harrison caught himself barely. His face had gone red, veins standing out at his temples. "When? How?" "Does it matter?" Cordelia found her voice smoother than she expected. Cool. Even. Like she discussed afternoon tea instead of the complete destruction of Harrison's plans. "The deed is done." "The deed?" Harrison laughed, sharp and ugly. "You married this nobody? This nothing? Out of spite?" "Out of necessity," Adrian corrected mildly. "Her inheritance required marriage before midnight. I was available. The math was simple." That hit different than Cordelia expected. The casual way Adrian dismissed any romance, any pretense this was about emotion, somehow made it more shocking. Society could forgive an elopement for love. Barely. But a calculated business arrangement announced like a stock transaction? That was offensive to every romantic notion they'd built their world around. Perfect. "You scheming little—" Harrison lunged forward. Adrian stepped between them so fast Cordelia barely tracked the movement. He didn't raise his hands, didn't make threats, just stood there. Smaller than Harrison, but somehow taking up more space. "Careful," Adrian said quietly. "That's my wife you're addressing." The word, wife, hit the ballroom like a physical blow. More gasps. Someone dropped a glass. Cordelia heard Victoria make a sound that might have been distress or triumph. Hard to tell. Harrison froze, fists clenched at his sides. For a moment, Cordelia thought he might actually swing. Then Edmund's voice boomed from across the room. "This is absurd." Her cousin shoved through the crowd, his red face shining with sweat and rage. "You can't possibly think this will stand. The will specifies—" "Marriage before midnight on her 25th birthday," Adrian interrupted, "which occurred—" He checked his watch. 3 minutes ago. The terms are satisfied. By trickery. By law. Adrian's voice stayed level, almost bored. "Unless you're suggesting there's something illegal about our marriage?" "The license is proper. The minister is ordained. The witnesses were present." "Which part concerns you?" Edmund sputtered. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. "I'll contest this, he finally managed. "I'll take it to court. I'll prove this was fraudulent. Please do." Cordelia stepped forward, done letting men speak for her. "Contest it. Drag it through every court in England. Meanwhile, I'll be living in my house, managing my inheritance, and you'll be exactly where you've always been, on the outside, wanting." Edmund's face went purple. "You ungrateful—" "Careful." This time it was Cordelia who interrupted. "My husband's family has excellent solicitors. I'm sure they'd be fascinated by how you've been managing the estate trust these past 3 years. All those questionable expenses. The property sales at suspiciously low prices to your friends. The color drained from Edmund's face. You can't prove I can. She smiled sweetly. I've been collecting documentation since Father died. Every receipt, every transaction, every forged signature. Shall we discuss it here? Or would you prefer privacy while you explain to a judge? The crowd had gone dead silent. This was better than any theater performance, real blood in the water, real scandal unfolding. Edmund looked between Cordelia and Adrian, calculation replacing rage in his eyes. This isn't over. Yes, Adrian said pleasantly. It is, but feel free to waste your money on solicitors if it makes you feel better. Edmund stormed out. Half the ballroom watched him go. The other half was still staring at Cordelia and Adrian like they'd grown extra heads. Harrison had recovered enough to speak. You'll regret this. He aimed the words at Cordelia specifically. Society won't forget. You've made yourself a laughingstock. Have I? Cordelia looked around the ballroom. Or have I made you one? The great Duke Blackwell, publicly rejected by a merchant's granddaughter. That'll play well in the papers. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Victoria appeared at Harrison's elbow, her hand possessive on his arm. Up close, she was even more beautiful than Cordelia remembered. Porcelain skin, perfect ringlets, the kind of effortless elegance money could buy. Harrison, darling, let them have their arrangement. It's beneath your notice. The dismissal was masterful. Cordelia almost admired it. Indeed, Lady Pemberton materialized from the crowd, her diamonds catching light like weapons. How quaint. A charity marriage. How progressive of you, Mr. Vale. Adrian's expression didn't change. Not charity, investment. I'm quite satisfied with my acquisition. Acquisition. Cordelia wanted to kick him, or possibly kiss him for sheer audacity. Well, Lady Pemberton's smile could cut glass. I'm sure you'll be very happy, in whatever accommodations you can afford, but my house in Belgrave Square should suffice, Adrian said mildly. 5 bedrooms, staff of 12, library with first editions dating to 1650. We'll manage. The silence that followed was delicious. Lady Pemberton's mouth opened and closed. She'd clearly expected Adrian to be poor. He dressed like it, acted like it. The revelation he owned property in one of London's most expensive neighborhoods hit like cold water. Belgrave Square? Harrison's voice had gone tight. Das Boytreim. Harrison's? Number 47? Adrian smiled. Lovely neighborhood. Your aunt lives on the same street, doesn't she? We'll have to have her over for tea. Cordelia bit her tongue to keep from laughing. Harrison's aunt was a notorious gossip who loathed him. Having her as neighbors would be exquisite torture. You're all mad, Victoria announced. Come, Harrison, let's leave them to their delusions. She swept away, dragging Harrison with her. Most of the crowd followed, already whispering, already composing the letters that would carry this scandal to every drawing room in England by morning. Cordelia's legs suddenly felt weak. Adrian must have noticed because his arm came around her waist, supporting her weight without making it obvious. We should leave, he murmured near her ear. Before you collapse and ruin your dramatic exit. I don't collapse. Us. You're about to. His voice was kind, though, not mocking. It's been a rather intense 9 minutes. 9 minutes. That's all it had taken to destroy and rebuild her entire life. 9 minutes from broken engagement to married woman. 9 minutes from humiliation to what? Victory felt premature. Survival, maybe. Can you walk? Adrian asked quietly. Yes. Then walk, head high, like you planned this all along. Cordelia straightened, pulled away from his support just enough to stand alone. They crossed the ballroom together, and she felt every eye tracking them, some hostile, some fascinated, all hungry for whatever came next. Outside, Adrian's carriage was waiting. Plain black, no crest, no ostentation. The driver nodded at Adrian like they were old friends. Home, sir? Home, and quickly. The moment the carriage door closed, Cordelia's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the bench, shaking. Adrian sat across from her, giving her space. Breathe. I'm breathing. You're hyperventilating again. I just... Cordelia pressed her hands to her face. What did we do? Got married. Secured your inheritance. Made several enemies and probably a few reluctant admirers. Adrian's voice stayed calm. Also ruined Lady Pemberton's evening, which I consider a personal victory. Cordelia laughed. It came out half sob. She's going to destroy me. She's going to try. She won't succeed. How can you know that? Because you're smart, you're angry, and you just declared war on everyone who underestimated you. Adrian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. That's a dangerous combination. Lady Pemberton specializes in crushing the weak. You're not weak. I feel weak. Feeling and being are different things. He paused. Also, you're shaking because the crisis is over. Your body's processing fear it couldn't afford to feel while you were fighting. It'll pass. Cordelia looked at him through her fingers. You sound very certain. I've been to war. I know what aftermath looks like. War. That explained the steadiness, maybe, the calm in crisis. She'd assumed Adrian was just naturally unflappable. But soldiers got trained to be calm, learned it through survival. Where? She asked. Crimea. 3 years. Came back with a scar, a daughter, and a very different perspective on what actually matters. Adrian's smile was brief. Ballroom politics seem less dire when you've seen real blood. The carriage rattled over cobblestones. Outside, London flowed past. Gaslights and shadows, the city that never quite slept. Tell me about Claire, Garandia, Cordelia said. Focusing on something concrete helped. Something that wasn't her complete destruction of every social connection she'd spent 5 years building. Adrian's expression softened immediately. She's 7, loves books, hates dolls, wants to be an explorer when she grows up. Currently, she's obsessed with maps and has memorized the names of every major river in Europe. That's specific. That's Claire. She doesn't do anything halfway. He pulled out his wallet, extracted a small photograph. This is from last month. Cordelia took it carefully. The girl in the image was thin, serious-faced, with dark hair and Adrian's gray eyes. She wasn't smiling, not the forced smile of children coached for photographs, just looking directly at the camera with an expression that suggested she was judging its quality. She's beautiful. She's terrifying, Adrian said, but his voice was warm. Completely fearless, asks questions that would get adults slapped. Last week she asked our vicar why God made mosquitoes if everything was supposed to be good. Despite everything, Cordelia smiled. What did he say? Something about mysterious ways. Claire was unimpressed. Started listing other design flaws she'd noticed. Adrian took the photograph back, studied it for a moment before tucking it away. She's going to eat you alive at first. Test every boundary. She's learned that adults leave, so she makes them prove they'll stay. Sounds exhausting. It is. Adrian met her eyes. I won't pretend otherwise. She's difficult and demanding and sometimes cruel in the way children are when they're protecting themselves. If you can't handle that, I can handle it. You don't know. I was that child, Cordelia interrupted. After my mother died. I made every governess cry, drove father to distraction, did everything possible to push people away before they could leave first. I know exactly what Claire's doing because I did it too. Something shifted in Adrian's face. Your mother, I didn't know. She died when I was 8. Fever, like your wife. 1 week she was fine, the next she was gone. Cordelia looked out the window, watching London blur past. Father tried. He loved her so much it broke something in him when she died. He was never the same. Is that when the debt started? Some. Mostly it was bad investments and worse friends. He wanted to give me the life mother would have wanted. Society, connections, security. Spent everything trying to buy respectability. She laughed bitterly. Ironic, really. All that effort and I still ended up exactly where we started. Desperate and grasping. You're not grasping. I married you for money. You married me for survival. There's a difference. Adrian's voice was firm. Grasping is what Edmund does. Taking what isn't his because he thinks he deserves it. You're just trying to keep what's yours. The carriage slowed, turned onto a quieter street. Cordelia recognized the neighborhood, Belgrave Square, exactly as Adrian had said. Tall white townhouses, gas lamps casting elegant shadows. The kind of quiet wealth that didn't need to announce itself. "We're here," Adrian said as they stopped before number 47. The house was beautiful in an understated way. 4 stories, creamstone, black iron railings. Lights burned in the windows. Someone had kept the house ready despite the late hour. A butler opened the door before they reached it. Older man, dignified, with the kind of face that suggested he'd seen everything and approved of very little. "Mr. Vale." He nodded. Then his eyes landed on Cordelia, and something flickered across his expression. "Madam Matthews, this is my wife." Adrian said it calmly, like he introduced new wives weekly. "Cordelia, Matthews has been managing this household since before I was born. He knows where everything is and how it should be done. Listen to him." Matthews's eyebrow rose fractionally. "Your wife, sir?" "As of approximately 20 minutes ago. It's been an eventful evening." "What?" "I see." Matthews stepped back, allowing them entry. "Should I prepare the blue room?" "Please, and tea, I think. Something strong." "Of course, sir." The entrance hall was elegant without being ostentatious. Dark wood paneling, good paintings, originals, Cordelia noted, not copies, and a staircase that curved upward into shadow. It smelled of beeswax and old books, and money so old it didn't need to prove itself. "Claire's asleep," Adrian said, reading Cordelia's unasked question. "She goes down at 8 and sleeps through cannon fire. You'll meet her tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Cordelia's voice came out shaky. Tomorrow she'd have to explain to a 7-year-old that she was suddenly married to the child's father. That should be fascinating. A young woman appeared from a side door. Dark hair, kind eyes, practical dress. "Sir, we didn't expect you back so—" "Oh, Kikiko. Mrs. Parker, this is Cordelia, my wife." Adrian was really leaning into that word now, like saying it enough times would make it real. "Cordelia, Mrs. Parker is Claire's governess, and the person who actually keeps this household running while I pretend to be in charge." Mrs. Parker's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Your wife." "It's been a surprising evening," Cordelia offered weakly. Yes, of course. Congratulations." Mrs. Parker looked genuinely baffled. "Should I wake Claire?" "No. Let her sleep. We'll explain in the morning." Adrian rubbed his face, and for the first time Cordelia saw exhaustion crack through his calm. It's been a night." Matthews returned with tea on a silver tray. Real silver, Georgian, worth more than Cordelia's entire wardrobe. He poured with precision and disappeared again without comment, though his expression suggested vast reservoirs of judgment. "He hates me already," Cordelia said once they were alone. "He hates everyone initially. Give him a week." Adrian handed her tea in a cup so fine she could see light through the porcelain. "Drink. You're still shaking." "Bull." She was. The teacup rattled against the saucer. Cordelia forced her hand steady through sheer will. Adrian watched her with those steady gray eyes. "Are you all right?" "No. Yes. I don't know." Cordelia set the tea down before she dropped it. "I just destroyed my reputation, married a stranger, and declared war on half of London society. I'm not sure all right is available as an option." "Fair assessment. What happens now?" "Now we sleep. Tomorrow we deal with consequences." Adrian stood, offered his hand. "I'll show you to your room." "My room?" She'd expected what? That he'd expect marital rights immediately? The thought sent ice down her spine. "Your room," Adrian confirmed. "We had an agreement, remember? Separate spaces. I meant it." Relief and something else, disappointment maybe, which was insane, flooded through her. "Thank you. I'm not Harrison." Adrian's voice was gentle. "I won't make demands you're not ready for. We have time to figure this out." He led her upstairs to a bedroom that was easily twice the size of her room at her own house. The house she'd saved, she reminded herself. The blue room Matthews had mentioned. It was lovely in a quiet way, pale blue walls, white linens, a fireplace already lit against the spring chill. Someone had laid out a nightgown, Unpacked luggage Cordelia didn't remember having. Your things are being collected tomorrow, Adrian explained. For tonight, my sister-in-law left some clothes. You're about the same size. Your sister-in-law knows? Catherine knows everything. She's terrifyingly well-informed. Adrian paused at the door. She'll probably descend tomorrow with opinions and advice. Be warned. More people to meet. More people who'll try to help, whether you want it or not. He smiled slightly. Welcome to family. It's family. The word sat strange in Cordelia's mouth. She'd had family once, mother, father, the small circle that was just the three of them. Then just father. Then just her and the slowly crumbling house, and Edmund circling like a shark. Now she had, what? A husband, a stepdaughter, a house full of servants who probably thought she was insane, an entire extended family who'd presumably have opinions about Adrian marrying in 9 minutes. Adrian? She caught him before he could leave. Yes? Why did you really do this? Not the practical reasons. The real one. He was quiet for a long moment. I watched Harrison treat you like property. Like something he could pick up and discard when a better option appeared. And I thought... He paused. I thought you deserved better than that. Even if better was just a choice. A choice to marry someone I don't know. A choice to survive on your own terms instead of his. Adrian's eyes met hers. I won't pretend this is romance, but it's honest. That has to count for something. He left before she could respond. Cordelia stood in the blue room, her room now, apparently, and felt the full weight of the evening crash down. She'd done it, saved her inheritance, kept her house, destroyed Harrison's plans, but at what cost? She changed into the borrowed nightgown, climbed into a bed that was far too comfortable, and stared at the ceiling trying to process what she'd become. Mrs. Adrian Vale, the wife of a man she didn't know, the stepmother to a child she'd never met, the scandal of the season. Sleep didn't come easy. When it finally did, Cordelia dreamed of ballrooms and falling and hands reaching out to catch her that disappeared before they could hold on. She woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the sound of shouting from downstairs. Child's voice, high and furious. I don't care. I don't want a new mother. You can't make me. Cordelia's heart sank. Day one of her new life, and it was already falling apart. She dressed quickly in borrowed clothes that fit reasonably well and followed the shouting downstairs. The entrance hall was chaos. Claire, small and fierce in a nightgown, facing down Adrian and Mrs. Parker with the fury of someone who'd been betrayed. You promised, Claire's voice cracked. You promised no more changes. I know, sweetheart, but I hate you. I hate you, and I hate her, and I want mother. The last word came out as a wail. Claire turned and ran, straight toward the stairs where Cordelia stood frozen. The child saw her and stopped dead. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Claire's face was blotchy with tears, her dark hair a mess, her gray eyes, so like Adrian's, blazing with rage and grief. You, Claire spat, this is your fault. Then she was gone, running past Cordelia up the stairs, a door slamming in the distance. Adrian looked up, saw Cordelia, and something in his expression broke. Welcome to the family. Cordelia stood on the stairs, watching the empty space where Claire had disappeared, and tried to remember the last time she'd felt this monumentally unprepared for anything. Adrian climbed toward her, exhaustion written in every line of his face. Up close, in morning light instead of ballroom shadow, he looked older than she'd thought, lines around his eyes, gray threading through the brown hair at his temples. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have woken her last night, explained before she found out her father married a stranger while she slept. Cordelia's voice came out sharper than intended. Yes, that might have helped. I know. He rubbed his face. I don't know what I thought. That having one night to process before telling her would somehow make it easier. For her or for you? Adrian flinched. That's fair. Mrs. Parker appeared at the bottom of the stairs, wringing her hands. I tried to prepare her, sir. Explained gently, but she heard the staff talking and, it's not your fault, Adrian said, though his tone suggested he thought it might be everyone's fault, including his own. Is she in her room? Locked herself in. Won't answer. Cordelia looked up toward where the slam had echoed. I'll talk to her. That's probably not... Adrian started. It's exactly what needs to happen. Cordelia was already moving, climbing the stairs. She thinks I'm the enemy, the intruder. I need to address that now before it calcifies. She's not going to listen, then she won't listen. But I'll have tried. Cordelia paused, looked back at him. Unless you're forbidding it? Adrian opened his mouth, closed it. No, you're right. Just be careful. She bites when cornered. So do I. Claire's door was on the 3rd floor, at the end of a hallway lined with portraits of stern-faced Vale ancestors. Cordelia knocked. No answer. Claire, it's Cordelia. Silence, then muffled. Go away. I will, in a minute. First, I need to say something. I don't want to hear it. I know. I didn't want to hear a lot of things people told me when I was your age either. I'm going to say it anyway. Cordelia leaned against the doorframe, speaking toward the wood. Cordelia leaned against. Your father and I got married last night, very quickly. You're angry about that. You should be. A pause. Then, you don't know anything about me. You're right. I don't. But I know what it feels like when adults make decisions that completely change your life without asking what you think. Cordelia kept her voice level. My mother died when I was 8. My father decided to move us to London. New house, new life, new everything. Nobody asked me if I wanted that. I hated it. Another pause, longer this time. Did you hate him? Claire's voice was smaller now, younger. Sometimes, when I was really angry, then I'd feel guilty for hating him because he was trying his best and it wasn't his fault Mother died. Cordelia slid down to sit with her back against the door. Feelings are complicated like that. You can be angry and sad and grateful all at the same time. The lock clicked. The door opened a crack. Claire's face appeared, blotchy, tear-streaked, suspicious. You're just saying that to make me like you. I'm saying it because it's true. Cordelia didn't move from her position on the floor. Whether you like me or not is entirely up to you, but I'm not going away. Your father and I are married. That's done. So we have to figure out how to exist in the same house without making each other completely miserable. Claire studied her for a long moment. Mrs. Parker said you're from society, that you're some rich lady who needed money. Mrs. Parker's half right. I'm from society, but I'm not rich. My family lost everything. I married your father because I needed to save my inheritance before my horrible cousin stole it. Cordelia met the child's eyes. So yes, it was about money. But it was also about survival. Sometimes those things are the same. That's not romantic. No, it's practical. Romance is nice in books, but it doesn't pay bills or keep roofs from leaking. Claire's expression shifted slightly, still wary, but less hostile. Mother was romantic. She and father met at a dance and fell in love in one night. That sounds beautiful. It was. Claire's eyes glistened. Then she died and everything was terrible, and now you're here replacing her. I'm not replacing anyone. Cordelia said it firmly. Your mother was your mother. No one can replace that. I'm just someone new who's going to be around. We can figure out what that looks like together. What if I don't want you around? Then you'll have to tolerate me being around anyway, and we'll both be miserable. Or, Cordelia paused, we could try being civil. Maybe even friendly eventually. Your choice. Claire chewed her lip, thinking. She had Adrian's intensity, that gray-eyed stare that seemed to see through polite lies. Do you even like children? She asked finally. I don't know. I've never really been around them much. Cordelia shrugged. Do you like adults? So. No, they're mostly awful. Fair, most of them are. Cordelia stood, brushed off her borrowed dress. Look, I'm not going to pretend I know what I'm doing. I've never been anyone's stepmother. I'll probably make mistakes. But I promise I won't lie to you or treat you like you're stupid. Deal? Claire considered. What if I'm horrible to you? Or then I'll probably be horrible back, and your father will have to referee, and everyone will be miserable. Cordelia offered her hand. Or we could try not being horrible. See how that goes. After a long moment, Claire shook it. Her hand was small, warm, still slightly sticky from breakfast or tears or whatever 7-year-olds got on their hands. I still don't like this, Claire said. Neither do I, really, but we're stuck with it. You're weird. So are you. I heard you interrogate a vicar about mosquitoes. Claire's mouth twitched, almost a smile. He was very stupid about it. Most adults are stupid about something. Cordelia turned to leave, then paused. Come down when you're ready. No rush. But there's breakfast, and I imagine your father is worrying himself sick. He worries about everything. Seems to be his primary skill. This time Claire definitely smiled. Small, but real. Cordelia made it halfway down the stairs before her legs started shaking again. That could have gone so much worse. Claire could have screamed, thrown things, refused to engage entirely. Instead, there'd been, what? A tentative truce? Agreement not to actively destroy each other? She'd take it. Adrian was pacing the entrance hall when she descended. He looked up, anxious. She didn't bite me. We talked. She's processing. Cordelia headed toward the dining room, following the smell of coffee. She'll come down when she's ready. What did you say to her? The truth. That this is weird and uncomfortable, and we're all going to have to figure it out. Cordelia poured coffee from a silver service, added sugar. Also that her mother was irreplaceable, and I'm not trying to be her. Adrian stared. You told her that her feelings are valid? Yes. Why wouldn't I? Cordelia took a long drink. The coffee was perfect. Of course it was. Everything in this house probably worked exactly as it should. She's not stupid. Lying to her would just make her trust me less. Most people would have tried to win her over, made promises about being friends. Most people are idiots. Cordelia set down the cup. Claire's been lied to enough. Adults telling her everything will be fine when it clearly isn't. She needs honesty. My honesty. She's 7. So was I when I learned adults lie constantly. Cordelia met his eyes. Trust me on this? Honesty is better, even when it's uncomfortable. Before Adrian could respond, Matthews appeared in the doorway. Sir, there's a situation. What kind of situation? What? The newspapers have arrived. Matthew's expression suggested he'd rather be announcing plague. The morning editions. You and Mrs. Vale are prominently featured. Cordelia's stomach dropped. Already? Society columnists work quickly when motivated. Matthews produced several papers, laid them on the table like evidence at a trial. The headlines were brutal. Merchant's granddaughter snares mystery bachelor in midnight marriage. Duke Blackwell jilted. Miss Ashford weds nobody in sudden ceremony. Fortune hunter or romantic? Ashford heiress makes shocking choice. Cordelia forced herself to read the articles. They were worse than the headlines, full of speculation, barely veiled insults, quotes from anonymous sources that were obviously Harrison or his friends. One suggested Adrian had somehow coerced her. Another implied she was pregnant and the marriage was a desperate cover-up. Well, she said finally. That's creative. Adrian was reading over her shoulder, his jaw tight. They can't print this. Half of it's libel. They can and did. Cordelia pushed the papers away. This is what we expected. Society destroying me for stepping out of line. Destroying us, Adrian corrected. Look at this one. The article in the Times was particularly vicious. It detailed Adrian's background, minor gentry, some military service, suspiciously little presence in society for a man claiming Belgrave Square residence. It questioned his finances, his character, his motives, called him an opportunistic nobody, and suggested Cordelia had fallen victim to a predatory fortune hunter. That's rich, Cordelia muttered. I approached you. They don't care about facts. Adrian's voice was tight with controlled anger. They care about narrative. And the narrative they're building is that I'm a villain and you're either a fool or complicit. Both, apparently. She pointed to another article suggesting she'd conspired with Adrian to defraud her family's estate. Matthews cleared his throat. There's more, I'm afraid. Your cousin Edmund is giving interviews. He's claiming the marriage is invalid due to, he consulted his notes, mental incapacity induced by emotional distress. He's saying I was insane? Cordelia laughed. It sounded slightly unhinged even to her. That's bold. He's also filing a formal complaint with the courts, requesting an immediate hearing to determine the marriage's validity and freeze your inheritance pending investigation. The room went very quiet. How fast can he move on that? Cordelia asked. With the right judge and enough money, days. Matthews looked genuinely apologetic. I took the liberty of contacting your family's solicitor. He's pessimistic. Of course he is. Cordelia pressed her fingers to her temples, feeling a headache building. Edmund probably already bribed half the judiciary. Then we'll fight it. Adrian's voice was firm. My brother's solicitors are better than Edmund's. A crash from upstairs cut him off. Then Claire's voice, high and frightened. Father! They ran. Claire was in the upstairs hallway, staring at her bedroom door. Someone had shoved a note under it, thick paper sealed with wax. Adrian got there first, snatched it up. His face went white as he read. What? Cordelia demanded. What is it? He handed her the note wordlessly. The handwriting was elegant, expensive. The message was simple. You took something of mine, now I'm taking something of yours. If you want the girl back unharmed, you'll meet my terms. Come alone to the address below at noon. No police. No heroics. Or Claire pays for your theft. Below was an address in Southwark, a rough neighborhood, dangerous. And it was signed with Harrison's family crest. Cordelia's vision narrowed to a point. He took her already? How is she? She looked at Claire standing right there in front of them. Not this Claire, Adrian said, his voice strangled. My niece, my brother's daughter, also named Claire. You have two Claires? Family name, my mother. He shook his head. It doesn't matter. Harrison has my brother's child. She's 5 years old, and he has her. The note crumpled in his fist. Cordelia saw murder in his eyes. We call the police, she said. No police. He'll what? Actually hurt a child? That's not leverage. That's a crime. Harrison's an ass, but he's not. You don't know what he's capable of. Adrian was already moving, heading for his study. I'll go, meet his demands, whatever they are. That's insane. He wants you alone so he can what? Kill me? Fine. Better than letting him hurt Claire. Adrian yanked open a drawer, pulled out a pistol, started checking the load with practiced efficiency. Cordelia grabbed his arm. Stop. Think. Harrison's not a murderer, he's a bully. This is about control, about punishing us for embarrassing him. He wants you scared and desperate. I am scared and desperate. My niece is 5. His voice cracked. She's terrified of strangers. She won't understand what's happening. If he hurts her, he won't. Cordelia said it with more confidence than she felt. Because we're not playing his game. We're changing the rules. Adrian stared at her. What? Harrison expects you to come alone, probably planning to force you into some kind of humiliating agreement. Sign over money, annul our marriage, publicly confess to whatever narrative he's spinning. He gets his pride back and his revenge all at once. Cordelia's mind was racing, pieces clicking into place. But he's counting on you being too scared to think clearly. I'm too scared to think clearly. Then it's good you married someone who's excellent at strategy when terrified. Cordelia took the gun from his hand, set it down. We're going together, and we're not negotiating. We're taking her back. He said no. He said a lot of things, most of them designed to make you compliant. She checked the clock. It's 9 now. We have 3 hours. That's enough time. Enough time for what? To gather leverage of our own. Cordelia turned to Matthews, who'd followed them. I need you to contact someone, discreetly. Who, madam? A journalist. Someone hungry. Someone who'd love a story about a duke kidnapping a child to punish a business rival. She smiled, sharp and cold. Let's see how Harrison likes having his reputation destroyed. Adrian grabbed her shoulders. You can't. If he finds out we involve the press, he won't find out until it's too late. Cordelia met his eyes. Trust me, I know these people. I know how they think. Harrison's counting on fear and secrecy. We're going to give him neither. This is insane. Yes, but it's better than your plan of walking into an ambush and hoping for the best. She turned back to Matthews. The journalist? Matthews hesitated, then nodded. I know someone. Young man from the Standard. Ambitious, unscrupulous. Perfect. Get him here in an hour. As Matthews left, Claire, the 7-year-old Claire, appeared in the doorway. Is little Claire okay? We're going to make sure she is, Cordelia told her. I need you to stay here with Mrs. Parker. Can you do that? I want to help. You can. By staying safe so your father doesn't have to worry about you too. Cordelia knelt down to Claire's level. I know you don't trust me yet, but trust this. I'm very good at dealing with men who think they're smarter than everyone else, and I'm very, very angry. Claire studied her face. Are you going to hurt the Duke? Not physically, but yes. I'm going to hurt him. Good. Claire's small face was fierce. He's mean. Yes, he is. Cordelia stood. Now go. Let the adults handle this. After Claire left, Adrian sagged against his desk. I don't know if this will work. Neither do I. But sitting here being terrified definitely won't work. Cordelia started pacing, thinking. Harrison's not as smart as he thinks he is. He's used to intimidation working, used to people backing down. You're not going to back down. I learned from the best. My mother negotiated with bill collectors and landlords for years before she died. Never showed fear even when we were days from eviction. Cordelia's voice hardened. Harrison thinks I'm some society girl who'll crumble under pressure. He's about to learn differently. The journalist arrived at 10, young, sharp-eyed, practically vibrating with ambition. His name was Thomas Fletcher, and he smelled a story like a shark smelled blood. Cordelia laid it out for him. The kidnapping, the ransom, Harrison's signature on the note. All of it. You have proof? Fletcher asked, pencil flying across his notebook. Adrian showed him the note. Fletcher's eyes gleamed. This is... If I can verify this... You can verify it, Cordelia interrupted. But not until we have the child back. I want your word you'll sit on this until we give the signal. And then? Then you print everything. Harrison Blackwell, Duke of Yorkshire, kidnapping a child to settle a personal grudge. Front page, multiple editions. Ruin him. Fletcher grinned. That'll destroy him. That's the idea. They spent the next hour preparing. Adrian wanted to bring weapons. Cordelia vetoed that. If things went violent, they'd already lost. Instead, she insisted on witnesses. People positioned near the Southwark address who could verify what happened. Harrison's counting on this being secret, she explained. No witnesses means no proof. We changed that equation. Adrian looked at her like she'd grown a second head. You're terrifying. Thank you. Cordelia checked the clock. 11:15. We should go. I want to be early. Early gives him time to prepare. Early gives us time to assess. See who he brought. How he's positioned. You don't walk into a negotiation blind. They took Adrian's carriage. The ride to Southwark was tense and silent. Cordelia watched London change from elegant townhouses to shabby commercial buildings to genuinely rough neighborhoods where people eyed their carriage with calculation. The address Harrison had given was a warehouse near the river, abandoned by the look of it, perfect for something you didn't want witnessed. Stop here, Cordelia told the driver. 2 blocks away, out of sight. Wait for our signal, but they approached on foot. Adrian had his hand in his coat pocket, probably on a weapon he'd brought anyway. Cordelia's heart hammered, but she kept her face calm. The warehouse door was ajar. They entered into dimness and the smell of river rot. Hello? Adrian called. A light flared in the back. Harrison stepped out from behind a pile of crates, and Cordelia's breath caught. He had the child. Little Claire, barely 5, dark curls, wearing a nightgown, was gripping Harrison's hand. Not struggling, not crying, just standing there looking confused. Uncle Harrison? The child's voice was small. Where's Papa? Right here, sweetheart. Adrian started forward, but Harrison raised his other hand. He was holding a pistol. Stop there. Adrian froze. Cordelia forced herself to assess the situation clinically. Harrison looked wrong, not smug like she'd expected, desperate. His clothes were rumpled, hair disheveled. The hand holding the gun shook slightly. What do you want? Adrian asked, voice strained. What I want? Harrison laughed, sharp and bitter. I want my life back, my reputation, my future, everything your opportunistic little wife destroyed. I destroyed? Cordelia stepped forward. You're the one who... Who what? Chose someone better? Harrison's eyes were wild. You were acceptable, presentable enough to parade around. But Victoria's actually worth something. Title, connections, breeding. You were just a placeholder until better came along, Cordelia finished. I understand. You made that very clear. Then why? Harrison's voice cracked. Why did you have to make such a spectacle? You could have quietly broken the engagement, saved us both embarrassment. Instead, you married this nobody and announced it like a victory. Because it was a victory. Cordelia kept her voice level despite fear screaming through her veins. You thought I'd just... What? Accept humiliation? Disappear? Make it easy for you? I thought you'd have the decency. Decency? Adrian's voice cut like broken glass. You're holding a 5-year-old hostage and lecturing us about decency? Harrison looked down at the child like he'd forgotten she was there. She's fine. I didn't hurt her. I needed leverage. Something to make you understand what you've cost me. What we've cost you. Cordelia took another step closer. Slow, careful. Harrison, look at yourself. You're in an abandoned warehouse holding a child at gunpoint because your pride got bruised. This isn't strategy. This is collapse. I'm not collapsed. I'm in control. You're terrified. Cordelia said it gently, almost kind. Victoria's parents withdrew their approval, didn't they? Because of the scandal. Because marrying you now would associate their daughter with someone publicly rejected. Harrison's face confirmed it. So you've lost us both, Cordelia continued. And instead of accepting that and moving on, you decided to, what, kidnap a child? Force us into some agreement? How exactly did you think this would end? Well, I thought, Harrison's voice broke. I thought you'd care about her enough to do whatever I asked. We do care. That's why we're here. Adrian moved slowly, putting himself between Harrison and Cordelia. Let her go, please. She's 5. She doesn't understand any of this. Neither do I. Harrison's hand tightened on the gun. None of this was supposed to happen. You were supposed to be grateful for my proposal. Victoria was supposed to be... He stopped, breathing hard. Everything's ruined. Little Claire started crying. Quiet, scared sobs. Cordelia made a decision. She walked forward, past Adrian's protective stance, past the rational voice screaming that this was insane. She walked right up to Harrison, close enough to touch the gun, and looked him in the eyes. Give me the child, she said quietly. Now. I'll shoot. No, you won't, because you're not actually a monster. You're just a man who made terrible choices and then made worse ones trying to fix them. She held out her hand. Give her to me. For a long moment, nothing. Harrison's eyes darted between her and Adrian and the gun and the crying child. Then slowly, he lowered the weapon. Cordelia scooped up little Claire, held her close. The child buried her face in her shoulder, still sobbing. It's over, Harrison, Cordelia said. Let us go. You'll destroy me. His voice was dead. The papers, the scandal. I'll lose everything. You've already lost everything. But Cordelia's voice wasn't cruel, just factual. This is just deciding how much worse it gets. Adrian reached them, gathered his niece into his arms. We're leaving. I could still... Harrison raised the gun again, but half-heartedly. You could, Cordelia agreed. But you won't. Because somewhere in there, she gestured at him, there's still a man who knows this is wrong. Harrison's arm dropped. The gun clattered to the floor. They left him there, standing alone in the abandoned warehouse, and Cordelia thought he'd never looked smaller. Outside, Fletcher was waiting with his photographer. Did you... We got her! Adrian was already moving toward the carriage, holding Claire close. Print everything. Harrison Blackwell kidnapped a child. Make sure London knows exactly what kind of man he is. Fletcher's grin was vicious. My pleasure. The ride home was quiet except for little Claire's hiccuping sobs. Adrian held her like she might disappear, murmuring reassurances. Cordelia stared out the window and tried to process what had just happened. They'd walked into an ambush and somehow walked out alive. Harrison had folded completely. She'd gambled that his desperation wouldn't override his fundamental cowardice, and she'd been right, but it had been close. So close. "Thank you," Adrian said quietly. Little Claire had finally fallen asleep against his chest. "What you did, walking up to him like that, was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. Is she fermenting?" "Probably both." Cordelia's hands were shaking now that the crisis had passed. I knew he wouldn't actually shoot. He doesn't have it in him." "You couldn't have known that." "No, but I believed it hard enough to bet our lives on it." She laughed weakly. "Maybe I'm the one who's collapsed. You saved her. We saved her." Adrian reached across the carriage, took her free hand. "Partners, then." Cordelia squeezed back. "Partners." "Also." They reached Belgrave Square to find the house in chaos. The elder Claire had apparently barricaded herself in the library, refusing to come out until they returned. Matthews was trying to negotiate. Mrs. Parker was crying. The moment they entered with little Claire, everything calmed. Adrian's brother, Catherine's husband, Cordelia learned, arrived within the hour to collect his daughter. He was a larger version of Adrian, broader and louder, and he looked ready to commit murder. "Where is he, he demanded. "Where's that bastard?" "Being destroyed in the morning papers," Cordelia said calmly, "more efficiently than you could manage with violence." He stared at her, then at Adrian. "You married someone terrifying." "I know," Adrian said. "Thank you for noticing." Dick. By evening, Fletcher's article had hit the streets. The scandal exploded across London like wildfire. Harrison's name was synonymous with coward and criminal. Witnesses confirmed the warehouse meeting. The photograph, little Claire crying, Harrison with the gun, was damning. Society turned on him with the same vicious speed it had turned on Cordelia. They sat in Adrian's study, reading the coverage. Claire, the 7-year-old, had finally emerged from the library and was curled up in her father's lap, reading over his shoulder. "He's finished," Adrian said quietly. "Yes." Cordelia felt no triumph, just exhaustion. "Do you regret it?" Claire asked. The child, not Adrian. "Marrying father?" Cordelia considered the question honestly. "Ask me again in a year." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I have." Cordelia met the child's eyes. "I made a choice in 9 minutes that changed everything. I don't know yet if it was right, but I know I'm still here, still fighting. That has to count for something." Claire thought about that. "I suppose." A knock at the door interrupted them. Matthews entered, looking grim. "Sir, there's been a development." "What now?" Adrian sounded exhausted. "Duke Blackwell's been found in his study. Apparently he—" Matthews paused delicately. "He ended his own life, gunshot. His valet discovered the body an hour ago." The room went silent. Cordelia felt the news hit like a physical blow. Dead. Harrison was dead. "Was there a note?" she heard herself ask. "Yes. Addressed to you, Mrs. Vale." Matthews handed her a sealed envelope. Cordelia's hand shook as she opened it. The message was brief. "You wanted me destroyed. Congratulations. I hope you're satisfied with what you've built from the ruins." It wasn't signed. Cordelia stared at the words until they blurred. She'd wanted Harrison punished, humiliated, brought down from his arrogant pedestal. She hadn't wanted this. "It's not your fault," Adrian said quietly. "Isn't it?" He made his choices, all of them. But Cordelia couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere in the past 24 hours, she'd crossed a line she didn't even know existed. She'd wanted victory. She'd gotten annihilation. And now a man was dead, and she had to figure out how to live with that. Cordelia didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Harrison's face. Not smug and arrogant like in the ballroom, but desperate and broken like in the warehouse. The last thing he'd said echoed, "Everything's ruined." And now he was dead. She sat in the library while the house slept around her. Harrison's note spread on the desk like evidence. "You wanted me destroyed. Congratulations." The words felt like an accusation and a curse all at once. "You're still awake." Adrian stood in the doorway, rumpled and exhausted in a dressing gown. He looked like he'd been trying to sleep and failing just as spectacularly as she had. "Can't seem to manage it," Cordelia said. He crossed to the sideboard, poured 2 glasses of brandy without asking if she wanted one. handed her one, and settled into the chair across from her. "It's not your fault," he said again. "You said that already." "You didn't believe me then either." Adrian took a drink. Harrison made his choices. The kidnapping, the threats, the gun. He did that, not you. I destroyed his reputation, publicly, viciously. I wanted him humiliated. He humiliated you first. So that makes it fine, an eye for an eye? Cordelia laughed bitterly. I turned his breakdown into front-page news, used a child's trauma as ammunition. What does that make me? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Human. Angry. Someone who fought back against a man trying to control her. He leaned forward. Cordelia, listen to me. Harrison's death isn't on you. He could have walked away, rebuilt somewhere else. Instead, he chose that. His choice, his responsibility. Society won't see it that way. Society sees what we tell them to see. Adrian's voice hardened. And right now, society is too busy being horrified by the kidnapping to spare much sympathy for Harrison. He wasn't wrong. The morning papers, there were stacks of them in the corner, Matthews kept bringing them, had been unanimous. Harrison Blackwell, fallen duke, disgraced criminal, tragic end to a wasted life. Some called it karma, others a cautionary tale about pride and desperation. None blamed Cordelia directly, but the implications lurked beneath every article. The woman who'd rejected him, the marriage that triggered his spiral, the scandal that destroyed him. Edmund's already capitalizing on it, Adrian said. Saw him quoted in the afternoon edition, talking about how Harrison's instability proves the marriage was coerced, that you were clearly not in sound mind to make such decisions. Cordelia's hand tightened on her glass. Of course he is. He's also accelerated the court petition. Hearing set for 3 days from now. 3 days. To prove her inheritance was legitimate. To defend the marriage. To somehow convince a judge that she wasn't insane or coerced or whatever narrative Edmund was spinning. What are our chances? She asked. Honestly, 50-50. Maybe worse. Adrian rubbed his face. Edmund's got money, connections. And now he's got Harrison's death as evidence of your pattern of erratic behavior. Our solicitor thinks the judge will at minimum freeze the inheritance pending investigation, which gives Edmund access to the estate, which gives Edmund access to everything. Adrian met her eyes. He'll strip it, sell what he can, hide the rest. By the time any investigation concludes, there'll be nothing left to recover. Cordelia felt rage and exhaustion warring in her chest. So I saved the inheritance just to watch Edmund steal it anyway. Not if we move first. Move how? Adrian pulled a folder from inside his dressing gown. I had Matthews do some research. Turns out Edmund's been busy these past 3 years, very busy. He spread papers across the desk. Financial records, property deeds, letters of credit, all with Edmund's signature. He's been selling off estate assets, Adrian explained, quietly, through intermediaries, paintings, furniture, even land parcels your father owned outright, pocketing the money and marking them as administrative expenses. Cordelia scanned the documents, her trained eye catching discrepancies immediately. These prices are absurd. This painting, I know what father paid for it. Edmund sold it for a quarter of the value. To his brother-in-law, who sold it 2 weeks later for triple that amount. Adrian's smile was sharp. They've been running a scheme. Edmund liquidates assets at deliberately low prices. His associates buy them cheap and resell high. They split the profits. That's embezzlement. That's fraud, theft, breach of fiduciary duty, and probably a dozen other crimes. Adrian leaned back. We take this to the courts. Edmund doesn't just lose the petition. He loses everything, possibly including his freedom. Cordelia studied the papers, her mind racing. This was leverage, real, substantial, devastating leverage. How fast can we move on this? She asked. My solicitor can file criminal charges by morning, but Adrian hesitated. It's ugly, Cordelia. This goes public. It's not just Edmund who suffers. His wife, his children, his entire family gets dragged through the scandal. His children who he's been feeding with money stolen from my family's estate. Yes, but they're still children, innocent in all this. Cordelia thought about Claire, both Claires, and how much children suffered when adults made terrible choices. Then she thought about Edmund's smug face, his wandering hands at dinner parties, his promise to sell her mother's house and turn her out. File the charges, she said, but offer him a deal first. What kind of deal? Yes. He drops the court petition, relinquishes any claim to the estate, returns what he's stolen or as much as can be recovered. In exchange, we don't press criminal charges. He keeps his reputation, his family stays intact, and he stays out of prison. Adrian studied her. That's generous, considering. That's strategic. If we destroy Edmund completely, we become the villains again. The heartless couple who drove one man to suicide and another to prison. Cordelia's voice hardened. But if we offer mercy, publicly, magnanimously, we control the narrative. We're the victims defending ourselves, not aggressors. You're terrifying, you know that? You've mentioned. Cordelia stood, gathering the papers. Set up a meeting, tomorrow. I want to watch Edmund's face when he realizes he's lost. The meeting happened at noon in Adrian's study. Edmund arrived with his solicitor, a nervous man named Waverley who kept mopping his forehead, and the barely concealed smugness of someone who thought they held all the cards. Mrs. Vale. Edmund's smile was condescending, or should I say Miss Ashford, given the circumstances. Mrs. Vale is fine. Cordelia sat behind Adrian's desk, a deliberate power play. Adrian stood behind her, silent support. Though I doubt I'll be answering to it much longer, given your petition. Nothing personal, you understand. Simply ensuring the family estate is properly managed. Edmund settled into the chair across from her like he owned it. Your recent decisions have raised legitimate concerns about your judgment. My decision to marry. Your decision to marry a fortune hunter within minutes of a broken engagement, publicly humiliate a duke, and trigger a chain of events ending in said duke's suicide. Edmund ticked them off on his fingers. I'd say that demonstrates significant instability. Interesting theory. Cordelia slid the folder across the desk. Here's mine. You've been systematically looting my family's estate for 3 years. Using your position as trustee to embezzle hundreds of thousands of pounds through fraudulent sales to your associates. Edmund's smile froze. I don't know what... Open the folder. He did. His face went white as he flipped through the evidence. Waverley peered over his shoulder, then actually gasped. This is... Edmund's voice shook. This is fabricated. Lies. That's your signature on every document, Adrian said mildly. We had them verified. Also spoke to several of your associates. They were very cooperative once we mentioned prison. You can't prove... We can prove all of it. Cordelia's voice was ice. The sales, the kickbacks, the falsified expense reports. We have bank records, witness statements, paper trails going back to the week after my father's funeral. You started stealing before his body was cold. Edmund's solicitor was frantically taking notes, his face gray. Mr. Ashford, if this is true, it's not true. Then you won't mind explaining it to a judge. Cordelia stood. We're prepared to file criminal charges this afternoon. Fraud, embezzlement, theft. I'm told the Crown takes breach of fiduciary duty very seriously. You could be looking at 10 years. You wouldn't dare. The scandal would destroy you. Yes, your wife, your children, your entire family. I'm aware. Cordelia walked around the desk, stood over him. Which is why I'm offering you a choice. Edmund looked up at her, hate and fear warring in his eyes. What choice? Drop the court petition, immediately. Sign a legal document relinquishing all claims to my family's estate, now and forever. Return everything you've stolen. We'll give you 30 days to liquidate what's necessary. Do that, and we don't press charges. That's extortion. That's mercy. Cordelia's voice hardened. Which is more than you deserve. More than you showed my father when you manipulated him into giving you trusteeship. More than you were planning to show me after you evicted me from my own house. Edmund's mouth opened and closed. The petition's already filed. I can't just... You can withdraw it. Today. Before the hearing. Adrian placed a prepared document on the desk. This states you've reviewed the marriage license, found it legitimate, and withdraw all objections. Sign it along with the release of claims, and this ends quietly. And if I refuse, then tomorrow's papers will have a new front-page story. The greedy cousin who stole from his dead uncle's estate, complete with evidence, witness statements, and some very unflattering commentary about your character. Cordelia leaned closer. Your choice, Edmund? Prison and disgrace, or walk away with your freedom intact? Waverly was already whispering urgently in Edmund's ear. Cordelia couldn't hear the words, but the intent was clear. Take the deal, you idiot. Edmund's hand shook as he reached for the pen. This is blackmail. This is consequences. Cordelia didn't move, didn't soften. Sign. He signed, both documents. His handwriting was barely legible, shaking with rage and fear. The money, he started. You have 30 days. Every pound you stole, returned to the estate. Fail to comply, and the deal's void. Adrian collected the signed documents. Matthews will show you out. Edmund stood, his face purple with suppressed fury. You'll regret this. You've already said that. It didn't come true then either. Cordelia stayed behind the desk, untouchable. Goodbye. Edmund, don't contact me again. He left, Waverly scurrying behind him. The moment the door closed, Cordelia's legs gave out. She collapsed into the chair, shaking. Well done, Adrian said quietly. I feel sick. That's normal. He poured her more brandy. You just destroyed a man's plans completely. It's supposed to feel terrible. Is this who I am now? Someone who threatens and manipulates, and someone who fights back. Adrian crouched beside her chair. Edmund had 3 years to do the right thing, to manage the estate honorably. Instead, he chose theft. You're just making sure he faces consequences. Cordelia drank the brandy in one swallow. 2 men in 3 days. Harrison dead, Edmund destroyed. I'm running quite the tally. Harrison destroyed himself. Edmund destroyed himself. You're just holding the knife? She laughed weakly. That's not much better. No, you're surviving. There's a difference. The door burst open. Claire, the 7-year-old, stood there in her nightgown, hair wild, clutching a newspaper. Did you really make the bad cousin leave? Claire, you're supposed to be in bed, Adrian started. Mrs. Parker told me what happened, that you found proof he was stealing and you made him confess. Claire's eyes were bright with something that looked like admiration. Is that true? Cordelia exchanged glances with Adrian. Yes, he won't be bothering us anymore. Good. Claire crossed to her, held out the newspaper. Also, you should see this. You're famous again. The evening edition. Cordelia took it with dread. The headline read, Vale Marriage Legitimate, Petition Withdrawn. Below, a smaller article detailed Edmund's sudden reversal. No mention of the evidence, the threats, the deal. Just that upon further review, Edmund Ashford had determined his cousin's marriage was valid and withdrew all objections. But it was the editorial that made Cordelia's breath catch. Written by someone named Margaret Thornton, it was titled, The Merchant's Granddaughter and the New Society. She read aloud, Miss Ashford, now Mrs. Vale, has committed the unforgivable sin of choosing her own path. In the span of mere days, she has rejected a duke's condescension, married for practical reasons rather than romantic theater, defended her inheritance against familial theft, and refused to accept the destruction society demanded of her. For this, she has been called mad, mercenary, and murderous. But perhaps Mrs. Vale's true crime is simply this. She has demonstrated that a woman need not accept the limitations placed upon her. That intelligence, strategy, and courage matter more than bloodline or beauty. That survival is not shameful, but necessary. Society clutches its pearls and predicts her downfall. I, for one, am eager to see her prove them wrong. The room was silent when she finished. Who's Margaret Thornton? Cordelia asked finally. Author, essayist, rather famous for controversial opinions. Adrian took the paper, read the editorial himself. This is remarkable. She's essentially declaring you the vanguard of women's liberation. I'm not trying to liberate anyone. I'm just trying to keep my house. Yes, but you're doing it by refusing to follow the rules. That's revolutionary whether you intend it or not. He showed her another section. Look, she's not the only one. 3 more editorials here, all defending you, calling the marriage unconventional but rational, praising your handling of Edmund as shrewd business sense. Claire tugged Cordelia's sleeve. Does this mean people like you now? Some people. Cordelia stared at the paper, disbelieving. Apparently, some people think I'm inspiring. You are inspiring, Claire said matter-of-factly. You're smart, and you don't let anyone push you around, and you kept your house even though everyone said you couldn't. She paused. Also, you didn't cry when that Duke was mean to you. I would have cried. I cried later, Cordelia admitted. Just not where anyone could see. That's even better. Strategic crying. Claire nodded approvingly. Can you teach me that? Despite everything, Cordelia laughed. Probably not something you should learn at 7. Why not? You said yourself being smart about emotions is practical. I'm creating a monster, Cordelia said to Adrian. You're creating someone who won't let herself be crushed by society's expectations, he corrected. That seems valuable. Over the next week, something shifted. The tide that had been so violently against Cordelia began, not to turn entirely, but to crack. More editorials appeared, some defending her, others condemning, but all acknowledging she existed as something other than Harrison's victim or Edmund's target. Invitations started arriving. Not from the highest society, Lady Pemberton and her ilk still considered Cordelia persona non grata, but from newer money, progressive thinkers, women who ran salons and literary societies instead of vapid balls. Mrs. Thornton wants to meet you, Adrian announced one morning, waving an invitation. She's hosting a gathering of forward-thinking women. You're invited as guest of honor. Guest of honor for what? Making a mess of my life? For surviving it. He set the invitation down. You don't have to go, but she's influential in certain circles, the kind of circles that might be useful allies. Cordelia thought about it. The old her, the one who'd spent 5 years carefully climbing society's ladder, would have dismissed this immediately. Progressive salons were where conventional society went to die. But conventional society had tried to destroy her. Maybe it was time to build something new. I'll go, she said. But you're coming with me. Obviously, someone has to protect you from overly enthusiastic intellectuals. The salon was in Bloomsbury, in a townhouse that smelled of books and strong tea. Margaret Thornton turned out to be a woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued, who greeted Cordelia like a general welcoming a promising recruit. Mrs. Vale, I've been dying to meet the woman who made Duke Blackwell shoot himself out of sheer embarrassment. Cordelia winced. That's not exactly how it happened, I know, but that's how history will remember it. Margaret linked arms with her, steered her into a room full of women who looked at Cordelia with curiosity rather than judgment. Ladies, our guest of honor, Mrs. Cordelia Vale, who in the span of 9 minutes turned survival into revolution. I didn't mean to, Cordelia started. The best revolutions are accidental. A younger woman, introduced as Sarah Chen, a writer, grinned at her. You didn't set out to challenge the marriage market. You just refused to be destroyed by it. That's more powerful than any manifesto. I just wanted my inheritance. Exactly. Margaret clapped her hands. You reduced marriage to what it actually is, a legal and financial arrangement, and society lost its collective mind. Because if women start admitting marriage is about survival and security rather than romance and destiny, the entire system collapses. Cordelia found herself swept into conversations she'd never imagined having, about property rights and financial independence and the legal limitations placed on women, about how society used shame and scandal to keep women compliant, about the performance of respectability versus actual survival. You could have hidden after Harrison's death, a woman named Eleanor pointed out. She was older, gray-haired, with the bearing of someone who'd fought these battles before, retreated into mourning and apology. Instead, you destroyed Edmund publicly and dared anyone to challenge you. That takes nerve. That takes desperation, Cordelia corrected. I was cornered. Aren't we all? Sarah leaned forward. That's the point. Society corners women constantly. Marry this man, behave this way, want these things. We're all desperate in different ways. You just did what most of us can't. You fought back. And won, Margaret added. That's the crucial part. You actually won. I'm not sure I'd call 2 men dead and half of society hating me a victory. Margaret, you're alive. You have your inheritance. You're married on your own terms. Your horrible cousin is neutralized. That's absolutely a victory. Margaret's expression softened slightly. That the cost was high. I won't pretend otherwise. But you paid it and survived. That matters. Adrian found her later, after the salon had devolved into smaller conversations and too much wine. You look thoughtful, he observed. They want to make me a symbol, Cordelia said, of women's independence and fighting against society's constraints. It's uncomfortable. You don't have to be anyone's symbol if you don't want to. But what if they're right? What if I accidentally did something important? She looked at him. Margaret thinks I've proven women can survive outside conventional marriage, that choosing practicality over romance is valid. Is she wrong? I don't know. I just wanted to keep my house. I didn't think about larger implications. Most people making history don't. Adrian took her hand. You did what you needed to survive. If that inspires others, that's their choice. You don't owe them anything. Don't I? If I've somehow made it easier for the next woman in my position, then that's wonderful. But it's not your responsibility to carry every woman's hopes. His voice was gentle. You're allowed to just be Cordelia. Messy, complicated, figuring it out as you go. Cordelia leaned against him, suddenly exhausted. When does it get easier? I don't think it does. We just get better at handling hard. They returned home to find Claire waiting up, technically in bed, but clearly listening for their arrival. She appeared at the top of the stairs in her nightgown, looking anxious. Did you have fun at the smart ladies' party? It was interesting, Cordelia allowed. Very interesting. Good. Claire descended the stairs. Because I need to tell you something, and I was worried if you had a bad night, you'd be too tired to listen properly. Adrian and Cordelia exchanged glances. What is it? Claire took a deep breath. I've decided you can be my stepmother officially. Not just because father married you, but because I'm choosing it. The words hit harder than Cordelia expected. Claire, I know I was awful at first, and I know you're still figuring things out, but you came back when you got little Claire from the bad Duke, and you made mean cousin Edmund leave, and you haven't tried to replace mother, or make me call you anything I don't want to. Claire's voice was very serious. So I'm choosing you. If you want to be chosen. Cordelia knelt down to Claire's level, this fierce little girl who'd decided to trust her. I want to be chosen very much. Good. Claire threw her arms around Cordelia's neck, hugging tight. Because I already told Mrs. Parker you're keeping me. You can't back out now. Over Claire's shoulder, Cordelia saw Adrian watching them with something soft and wondering in his expression. Maybe, she thought, this was what winning actually looked like. Not triumph, not vindication. Just this. A child choosing to trust her. A husband who stood beside her instead of controlling her. A house that was hers, legally and actually. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It was stranger, harder, more complicated. But it was hers. Completely, utterly hers. And that, Cordelia realized with sudden clarity, was worth more than all the Duke's promises had ever been. The funeral was obscene in its grandeur. All black plumes and weeping angels carved in marble. Hundreds of mourners who'd probably despised Harrison when he was alive, but showed up anyway because society demanded it. Cordelia stood at the back of the church with Adrian, watching the spectacle and feeling nothing but a hollow exhaustion that had settled into her bones over the past 3 days. You don't have to be here, Adrian murmured. He'd said it twice already this morning. Yes, I do. Cordelia kept her eyes forward. If I don't come, they'll say I was too guilty to face what I'd done. If I do come, they'll say I'm gloating. Either way, I lose, so I might as well lose on my terms. Victoria sat in the front pew, veiled in black, playing the grieving almost fiancé with convincing anguish. Her mother dabbed at her eyes. Harrison's elderly aunt, the notorious gossip from Adrian's street, sat rigid and furious, glaring at anyone who dared meet her gaze. The vicar droned on about Harrison's virtues, his charity, his nobility, his tragic end. He didn't mention the kidnapping. Nobody did. Fletcher's article had been quietly buried after Harrison's death. Apparently, publishing accusations against a dead duke was considered poor taste, even when they were true. The witnesses had been paid off or scared off. Little Claire's ordeal had been reduced to a misunderstanding in the official record. Society had closed ranks around one of their own, even in death, especially in death. Cordelia felt Adrian's hand find hers, squeezing gently. She squeezed back, grateful for the anchor. After the service, they filed out into weak London sunlight. Cordelia braced herself for the inevitable confrontations. Lady Pemberton materialized first, resplendent in mourning silk that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. "Mrs. Vale, how brave of you to attend." The words dripped poison disguised as sympathy. "Lady Pemberton." Cordelia kept her voice neutral. It seemed appropriate to pay respects. "Respect." Lady Pemberton's smile could have cut glass. "Yes, I suppose even you understand the importance of that. Though perhaps you should have considered it before." She paused delicately. "Well, before." "Before what?" Cordelia asked. "Before I married? Before I defended myself? Before I refused to be discarded quietly? Isham. Wishes. Well, before you drove a man to his death." The words hung in the air between them. Around them, conversations died. People turned to watch. Cordelia felt Adrian tense beside her, but she touched his arm, keeping him still. This was her fight. "Harrison made his own choices," she said clearly, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. "Every single one of them. I won't apologize for surviving his." "Whoa." "Damned." "Surviving?" Lady Pemberton's voice rose. "You destroyed him, humiliated him, published lies about him kidnapping a child." "Not lies." Adrian's voice cut in, hard as steel. "My niece was taken." Harrison admitted it. There were witnesses. Thoughts this. Witnesses who were paid by that horrible journalist. Witnesses who told the truth. Cordelia stepped forward, forcing Lady Pemberton back. "Harrison kidnapped a 5-year-old child to punish me for not accepting his rejection gracefully. That's what happened. Whether you acknowledge it or not doesn't change the facts." "How dare you How dare I what? Refuse to be blamed for a man's choices? Refuse to perform the pretty devastation you all expected?" Cordelia's voice shook, but not with fear, with rage. Cordelia's voice shook. Harrison had every advantage. Title, wealth, position. He chose to use those advantages to be cruel. And when cruelty had consequences, he chose to end his life rather than face them. That's tragic. "But it's not my fault." Lady Pemberton's face had gone red. "You're shameless." "I'm honest. There's a difference. You're a monster. She's my wife." Adrian's voice was quiet but carried. "And if you insult her again, you and I will have a problem that doesn't end with polite conversation." The threat, delivered calmly, almost pleasantly, made Lady Pemberton step back. But Victoria was there now, pushing through the crowd. Her veil was up, her beautiful face twisted with something ugly. "You're proud of this," she said to Cordelia. "You're actually proud you killed him." "I didn't." "You might as well have pulled the trigger yourself." Victoria's voice cracked. "He loved you. He was going to marry you, and you threw it away for money and revenge, and he didn't love me." Cordelia said it gently, which somehow made it worse. "He didn't love you either. Harrison loved himself and the image he'd built. When that image cracked, he couldn't bear it." "You don't know anything about him, Mom." "I know he discarded me publicly to pursue you. I know he tried to use a child as leverage when his pride was damaged. I know he chose violence over accountability." Cordelia met Victoria's eyes. "I'm sorry he's dead. Genuinely. But I won't pretend he was something he wasn't just to make his death easier to process." Victoria slapped her. The crack echoed across the churchyard. Cordelia's head snapped to the side, her cheek burning. For a moment, absolute silence. Then Adrian moved, fast, furious, but Cordelia caught his arm. "Don't," she said quietly. "She hit you." "I know." Cordelia touched her stinging cheek, met Victoria's tear-streaked glare. Feel better? Victoria's hand was shaking. I hate you. That's fair. Cordelia's voice was surprisingly steady. I didn't particularly like you either, but Harrison's death isn't my fault, and it's not yours. It's his, and we both have to find a way to live with that. Jose, I can't. Victoria's composure shattered completely. She turned and fled back toward the church, her mother hurrying after her. The crowd began to disperse, whispering. Cordelia heard fragments, shameless and cold and no remorse. But also, she has a point, and Harrison was always unstable. And perhaps she's not entirely wrong. Small mercies. Adrian was still vibrating with suppressed rage. We're leaving. Yes. Cordelia suddenly felt exhausted beyond measure. Please. They walked to the carriage in silence. Only when the door closed and they were moving did Adrian speak. You're bleeding. Cordelia touched her lip. Victoria's ring had caught skin when she slapped. Sure enough, blood on her fingertips. It's nothing. It's assault. It's done. She found a handkerchief, dabbed at the cut. Let it go. How can you be so calm? Because being angry won't change anything. Cordelia leaned back against the seat, closing her eyes. Harrison's dead. Victoria's grieving. Society thinks I'm a monster. Getting upset about it won't make any of it less true. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Do you regret it? Any of it? Cordelia opened her eyes, looked at him. Really looked. In the 3 days since Harrison's death, Adrian had barely slept. She could see it in the shadows under his eyes, the new lines around his mouth. He'd been trying to shield her from the worst of society's venom while managing his own guilt and Claire's questions and the general chaos of their suddenly very public marriage. I regret that Harrison's dead, she said carefully. I regret that a 5-year-old was traumatized. I regret that we're living through a scandal that won't die for months. She paused. But do I regret marrying you? Not yet. Ask me again when I've had more sleep. He almost smiled. Fair. The carriage pulled up to the Belgrave Square house. Matthews was waiting at the door, looking unusually agitated. Sir, Mrs. Vale, you have a visitor. Tell them we're not receiving, Adrian said tiredly. It's your brother, sir, and he's brought someone. Matthews lowered his voice. The magistrate. They're in the study. They've been waiting an hour. Cordelia's stomach dropped. The magistrate? I'm afraid so, madam. Adrian and Cordelia exchanged glances. Then, wordlessly, they headed for the study. Adrian's brother, Richard, stood by the fireplace looking like thunder. With him was a thin man in official robes, holding papers that looked distinctly legal. Richard, Adrian said carefully, what's this about? This, Richard gestured at the magistrate, is Magistrate Wells. He has questions about Harrison Blackwell's death. Questions? Cordelia's voice came out steadier than she felt. It was suicide. There was a note. Yes. Wells's voice was dry, precise. A note addressed to you, Mrs. Vale. That's unusual. Harrison blamed me for his downfall. That's hardly surprising. No. But combined with the kidnapping allegations that were published and then mysteriously retracted, and the timing of his death, Wells studied her over his spectacles. It raises concerns. You think I killed him? Cordelia almost laughed. I was here, at home, all evening. Ask the staff. Staff can be paid to lie. Are you accusing my wife of murder? Adrian's voice went cold. Based on what evidence? Based on motive, opportunity, and the fact that Duke Blackwell's death was remarkably convenient for your family. Wells set his papers on the desk. The kidnapping story disappears. Your marriage scandal gets buried under bigger news. Your wife's inheritance, previously contested, is now secure. That's, Cordelia started, circumstantial? Wells smiled thinly. Perhaps, but enough to warrant investigation. Richard stepped forward. This is absurd. Cordelia was here, I was here, we all were. Harrison killed himself because he couldn't face the consequences of his actions. So you say, but without a proper inquest. Then hold an inquest. Cordelia surprised herself with her own calmness. Examine the evidence, question the witnesses, do whatever you need to do. You'll find I had nothing to do with Harrison's death beyond being the target of his final spite. Wells raised an eyebrow. You're very confident. I'm very innocent. There's a difference. We'll see. Wells gathered his papers. You're not to leave London, either of you, and I'll need full access to your household staff for questioning. After he left, Cordelia sank into a chair. This is never going to end, is it? It will, Richard said grimly. Wells is thorough, but he's not corrupt. If there's no evidence, he'll close the case. And if he decides there is evidence, even manufactured, then we fight it. Adrian knelt beside her chair. You're not alone in this. I got us into it. We got us into it, together. 9 minutes, remember? He took her hands. Whatever comes next, we handle it together, say. Cordelia wanted to believe him. But the weight of everything, Harrison's death, society's hatred, now an official investigation, felt crushing. Claire appeared in the doorway, still in her funeral clothes. Is someone trying to arrest Cordelia? No, Adrian said quickly. Just asking questions. That's what they said before they arrested the baker. Claire walked in, climbed onto Cordelia's lap without asking. The gesture was so casual, so trusting, it made Cordelia's throat tight. He didn't do it either. They let him go eventually, but everyone still thought he was guilty. Reassuring, Cordelia muttered. I'm just saying. Claire settled against her. You should probably have an alibi. I do. I was here. Can you prove it? Cordelia thought. That night, the night Harrison died, she'd been in the library, reading until late, too wired from the kidnapping to sleep. Matthews had brought her tea around 10. Mrs. Parker had checked on her around 11. Then she'd finally gone to bed around midnight. The staff saw me, she said slowly. But Wells is right. They could be lying. Was anyone else here? Someone who wasn't staff? Cordelia's mind raced, then stopped. The journalist, Fletcher. He came by around 9 that evening, wanted to discuss the follow-up article. Adrian straightened. I'd forgotten. He was here for nearly an hour. Arguing about ethics. Cordelia almost laughed. He wanted to publish details about Harrison's finances. I told him it was cruel to attack a dead man's character further. That's your alibi, Richard said. A journalist, independent witness, and the timing, 9 to 10, that's when Harrison died. The valet found him at 10:30, body was already cold, means it happened earlier. So if I was here with Fletcher, you couldn't have been in Harrison's study pulling the trigger. Adrian was already moving toward the door. I'm getting our solicitor. We're ending this now. Will we? The investigation took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of questions and scrutiny, and society watching with hungry eyes to see if the merchant's granddaughter would finally get her comeuppance. Fletcher's testimony was crucial. He confirmed the meeting, the timing, even provided his notes from their conversation. The staff corroborated everything. The physician who examined Harrison's body confirmed the time of death. Wells was forced to conclude what everyone already knew. Harrison Blackwell had killed himself, alone, in his study, while Cordelia was miles away arguing about journalistic ethics. The official verdict was suicide while the balance of mind was disturbed. Society moved on to newer scandals. But something had shifted during those 2 weeks. Cordelia had stopped caring what they thought. Somewhere between being accused of murder and watching Claire casually defend her to suspicious servants, she'd realized something fundamental. She'd been trying to earn society's approval for 5 years, and it had gotten her nowhere. All the careful manners, the perfect behavior, the desperate social climbing, worthless. What mattered was the small, fierce child who now refused to sleep unless Cordelia read her bedtime stories. The husband who stood beside her even when it would have been easier to distance himself. The household that had quietly, steadily chosen loyalty over propriety. 3 months after Harrison's death, Cordelia was in the garden with Claire when Matthews brought a letter. From your cousin Edmund, madam. Cordelia's hands stilled on the roses she was cutting. She'd been expecting this. Edmund had been quiet since the investigation cleared her, suspiciously quiet, but she'd known it wouldn't last. She opened the envelope, read the contents, then laughed. What? Claire looked up from her book. Edmund's dropping the inheritance contest. Really? Adrian appeared from the house, dirt on his hands from whatever project he'd been working on. Why? Because Cordelia reread the letter to make sure she hadn't imagined it. His solicitor informed him that contesting a marriage that's been legally consummated and publicly documented for 3 months is pointless, also expensive, and likely to end with him paying our legal fees. He's giving up? He's admitting defeat. Cordelia folded the letter carefully. The house is mine. The inheritance is mine. Everything my father left. It's all legally, permanently mine. The victory felt oddly hollow. She'd imagined this moment for months, the satisfaction of beating Edmund, of securing her future. But standing in the garden with dirt under her nails and Claire leaning against her side, she realized the inheritance barely mattered anymore. We should celebrate, Adrian said. Should we? You won. You saved everything you fought for. Did I? Cordelia looked around the garden. Adrian's garden, technically, though he'd told her to do whatever she wanted with it. I lost my reputation. I'm blamed for a man's death. Half of London thinks I'm a murderer, and the other half thinks I'm an opportunistic fortune hunter. And yet you're still standing. Barely. More than barely. Adrian came closer, took her hands. His were warm, solid, real. You've survived an investigation, a scandal, and Lady Pemberton's continued existence. You're teaching Claire mathematics and making the staff actually laugh. You've turned my dusty library into something alive. He paused. You've made this place a home. Cordelia felt her throat tighten. I'm just trying to survive. No, you're living. There's a difference. Claire tugged on her skirt. Are you going to cry? No. You look like you're going to cry. I don't cry. Everyone cries sometimes. Claire said it matter-of-factly. Even you. It's okay. And somehow that, a 7-year-old giving her permission to be human, broke something loose in Cordelia's chest. She did cry then. Not prettily, not gracefully. Just stood in the garden and let 3 months of terror and exhaustion and guilt pour out. While Adrian held her and Claire patted her arm and said, there, like she'd learned from books. When it was over, Cordelia felt scraped raw but somehow lighter. Better? Adrian asked quietly. Maybe. She wiped her face. I'm a mess. You're human. Finally. What does that mean? It means you've stopped performing. Stopped trying to be what society expects. He smiled slightly. I rather prefer this version. The one who cries in gardens? The one who's honest about it. That evening, they had dinner as a family. Cordelia, Adrian, Claire, and Richard with his wife Catherine, who turned out to be sharp-witted and surprisingly kind. Little Claire, the niece, was there too, recovered from her ordeal but clingy with her parents. Over roast and potatoes and wine that was probably too expensive to waste on casual family dinners. They talked about nothing important. Books Claire was reading. Richard's business ventures. Catherine's opinions on the latest terrible opera. Normal. Domestic. Boring in the best possible way. Later, after Claire was asleep and the guests had gone, Cordelia found herself in the library with Adrian. He was reading. She was ostensibly organizing, but mostly just enjoying the quiet. I need to tell you something, Adrian said suddenly. Cordelia looked up. What? I lied, that night at the ball. When I said I didn't love you. Her heart stuttered. Adrian, I didn't love you then. That was true, but I'd been aware of you for years. The way you moved through rooms like you were performing. The way you never quite let your guard down. He set down his book. I wondered what you'd be like if you felt safe enough to stop performing. And now? Oh, now I'm dangerously close to actually loving you. The real you. The one who cries in gardens and argues with 7-year-olds and faces down magistrates without flinching. He stood, came to her. I thought you should know. Before we get any further into this accidentally on purpose marriage. Cordelia couldn't breathe properly. I'm not good at this. The emotion part. I know. I might never. I know that too. Adrian touched her face gently, careful of the fading bruise from Victoria's ring. I'm not asking for anything, just telling you where I stand. Why? Because honesty matters. You taught me that. He smiled. Well, you and Claire between you. Cordelia leaned into his touch, let herself be held without calculating the cost or consequences. I don't know if I can love you back. Can't or won't. Well, don't know. The distinction seems important, but I'm too tired to figure out which. Then don't. Not tonight. Adrian pulled her closer. Just be here, that's enough. It shouldn't have been enough. Cordelia had spent her entire life being told she needed to be more proper, more charming, more accommodating, more everything. The idea that just existing was sufficient felt revolutionary. She rested her head against his chest, listened to his heartbeat, and let herself simply be. A week later, Victoria showed up. Cordelia was in the drawing room when Matthews announced her, and every muscle in her body tensed. Should I send her away, madam? No. Cordelia set down her tea. Let her in. Victoria entered looking subdued. No veil this time. No dramatic mourning. Just a woman in a simple day dress, dark circles under her eyes. They stared at each other for a long moment. I owe you an apology, Victoria said finally. For hitting you. It was childish and cruel. Yes, it was. Cordelia didn't offer the easy forgiveness Victoria was clearly hoping for. Why are you here? Because... Victoria twisted her hands together. Because I've been thinking. About Harrison. About what you said at the funeral. Which part? That he didn't love either of us. Victoria's voice cracked. You were right. I didn't want to believe it, but you were right. He loved the idea of us. The status, the appearance, but not us as people. Cordelia gestured to a chair. Victoria sat. He proposed to me 3 days after ending your engagement, Victoria continued. I thought it was romantic, passionate, love at first sight. She laughed bitterly. I was so stupid. You were young. There's a difference. I'm still young. And still stupid, apparently, because I came here thinking... She stopped. I don't know what I was thinking. That we could bond over shared disappointment in the same terrible man? Something like that. Victoria met her eyes. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he'd just been honest? Told you he wanted to end it before publicly pursuing me? Yes. Every day. Cordelia poured Victoria tea without asking. But Harrison wasn't capable of honest. He was too concerned with appearances. He wasn't always like that. When we were children, our families were friends. He was kind, funny even. Victoria accepted the cup. I thought marrying him would bring that person back, but I think that person never really existed. It was just another performance. They sat in silence for a moment. I don't forgive you for hitting me, Cordelia said finally, but I understand it. Grief makes people cruel. I wasn't just grieving Harrison. I was grieving who I thought he was, the future I thought we'd have. Victoria's hands shook around the teacup. Everything I built my identity around turned out to be lies. Welcome to the club. Cordelia's voice was dry. Founding member, right here. Victoria almost smiled. Do you think we could not be friends, obviously, but not enemies? Yes, that. Cordelia considered. Society would hate it. Lady Pemberton would probably combust. But society's opinion had stopped mattering somewhere around the third murder accusation. Not enemies, she agreed, tentatively. Victoria left 20 minutes later, and Cordelia felt something loosen in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly. Not friendship. But maybe the beginning of understanding. 6 months after the 9-minute marriage, Cordelia received an invitation. Lady Pemberton was hosting her annual autumn ball. The invitation was delivered by hand, sealed with wax, formal enough to be proper, but late enough to be an insult, clearly an afterthought. You're not going, Adrian said when he saw it. Actually, I am. She's been vicious to you. She's been vicious to everyone. It's her primary personality trait. Cordelia studied the invitation. But this is her admitting I exist, that I'm not going away. I won. This is what winning looks like. This looks like walking into a den of people who hate you, most of whom I don't care about anymore. Cordelia set the invitation aside. But I need to do this. Not for them. For me. To prove I'm not hiding. Then we go together. Obviously. The night of the ball, Cordelia wore red. Not the demure pastels society preferred or the mourning colors they'd expect. Bold, brilliant red that made a statement she couldn't quite articulate but felt in her bones. Adrian offered his arm. Ready to scandalize London again? Always. They entered the ballroom together, the same ballroom where this had all started 6 months ago, and Cordelia felt every eye turn toward them. But this time she didn't care. Lady Pemberton greeted them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mrs. Vale, how bold of you to come. Lady Pemberton, how kind of you to invite us. Cordelia matched her false sweetness. Lovely party. Yes, well, one must maintain standards even when society is overrun with, she paused delicately, new additions. Indeed, Cordelia smiled. How fortunate you have us new additions to make your parties interesting. She swept past before Lady Pemberton could respond. Adrian was grinning. That was brutal. That was mild. I'm being polite. Cordelia accepted champagne from a passing server. Watch me be polite for an entire evening. It's exhausting. They circulated. Some people were cold, others curious, a few genuinely kind. Cordelia navigated it all with the skills she'd spent 5 years honing, but now without the desperate need for approval. Halfway through the evening, Edmund appeared. Cordelia hadn't seen him since he'd dropped the inheritance contest. He looked older, diminished somehow. The bluster had leaked out of him. Cordelia, he said stiffly. Edmund. They stared at each other. Then Edmund did something completely unexpected. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For all of it. The will. The contest. Being a complete bastard about your mother for years. Cordelia blinked. Are you drunk? Sober, unfortunately. He glanced around, lowered his voice. I've been thinking. About father. About how he treated you and your mother. About how I... He stopped. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just wanted you to know. I was wrong. He walked away before Cordelia could respond. Adrian appeared at her elbow. What was that? I think... Cordelia watched Edmund's retreating back. I think that was an actual apology. From Edmund? Apparently hell has frozen over. As midnight approached, Cordelia found herself back on the same terrace where Adrian had proposed 6 months ago. The garden below was still geometrically perfect. The city still smelled of smoke and roses, but everything else had changed. Adrian joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. Thinking about that night? Wondering if I'd do it again, knowing everything that came after. Would you? Cordelia thought about it honestly. The scandal, the investigation, Harrison's death and her role in it, the slow, painful process of building something real from desperate foundations. Yes, she said finally, every terrible, beautiful, impossible moment, I'd choose it again. Even the 9 minutes? Yeah, especially the 9 minutes. She turned to face him. That's when I chose myself instead of what everyone else wanted me to be. Adrian pulled her closer. For what it's worth, I'd choose it too. All of it. Even the murder accusations? Even those. He kissed her forehead. You make life significantly less boring. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. I'm working on it. Sit. They stood together on the terrace, watching London sparkle below, and Cordelia felt something settle in her chest. Not happiness exactly. She wasn't sure she believed in that anymore. But contentment, purpose. The sense that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Inside, the orchestra played and society danced their careful patterns. Cordelia had spent years learning those patterns, trying to perfect them. Now she was writing new ones entirely. Ready to go home? Adrian asked. Home. Not her father's crumbling house or the Ashford estate she'd fought to save. Home was Belgrave Square, and Claire's chaotic bedroom, and the library full of books they were slowly cataloging together. Home was Matthew's disapproving sniffs and Mrs. Parker's gentle corrections and the way the staff had stopped treating her like an intruder. Home was this man beside her who'd gambled on 9 minutes and somehow made it work. Yes, what the, Cordelia said. Let's go home. Asaikas. They left the ball without fanfare, without announcing their departure, without caring who noticed or what conclusions they drew. Cordelia had spent too much of her life worrying about what society thought. She was done performing. In the carriage, Adrian took her hand. I love you. The words still surprised her, even though he'd been saying them for weeks now. Casual, constant, without demanding anything in return. Cordelia looked at their joined hands. His larger, rougher from work he didn't need to do but chose anyway. Hers smaller, still adjusting to not wearing her mother's ring but the simple gold band Adrian had given her instead. I know, she said finally. And I'm working on it. On loving me back? On letting myself. She met his eyes. I don't know if I'm capable of the kind of love people write poems about, but I know I choose you every day. Is that enough? Us. Adrian smiled. That's everything. When they reached home, Claire was still awake despite Mrs. Parker's best efforts. She came barreling down the stairs in her nightgown, demanding to know if anyone had been mean to Cordelia at the ball. A few people, Cordelia admitted, but I was meaner back. Good. Claire grabbed her hand. Come read to me. We're at the part where the explorer finds the lost city. It's nearly midnight. Please? Cordelia looked at Adrian, who shrugged. I'll make tea. Take your time. So Cordelia climbed the stairs with Claire, sat on the edge of the child's bed, and read about lost cities and impossible journeys while Claire fought sleep with stubborn determination. When the child finally dropped off, Cordelia sat there a moment longer, looking at this fierce, difficult, wonderful person who'd chosen to trust her, who called her Cordelia instead of mother, but held her hand like she mattered. She kissed Claire's forehead, an impulse, unplanned, and headed back downstairs. Adrian was in the library with tea and brandy and the book he'd been reading earlier. He looked up when she entered. She asleep? Finally. Cordelia accepted the brandy, curled into her favorite chair, her chair now, claimed through months of evening reading. She wanted 3 more chapters. She always wants 3 more chapters. I know. I read them anyway. Adrian smiled. You're getting soft. Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation. Your reputation is already ruined. True. Cordelia sipped her brandy, felt the warmth spread through her chest. But I built something better from the ruins. And sitting there in the quiet library with her accidentally on purpose husband and their accidentally on purpose family sleeping upstairs, Cordelia Ashford Vale, formerly the merchant's granddaughter, formerly Harrison's discarded fiancé, formerly society's favorite scandal, realized something profound. She was happy. Not the performance of happiness she'd perfected for society. Not the desperate grasping after security that had defined her early years. Just simple, genuine, surprising happiness. It had taken 9 minutes to change her life. It had taken 6 months to build a new one. And she would choose it. Choose him, choose this family, choose this chaotic, beautiful disaster, every single time. What are you thinking? Adrian asked quietly. Cordelia looked at him. This man who'd seen her at her worst and decided to stay anyway, who'd gambled on 9 desperate minutes and made it the foundation of something real. I'm thinking, she said slowly, that marrying you was the best terrible decision I've ever made. Adrian laughed. I'll take it. You should. It's as close to I love you as I'm capable of right now. Then I'll treasure it appropriately. He raised his glass. To terrible decisions that somehow work out. Cordelia clinked her glass against his. To 9 minutes, that changed everything. They drank to that. To rash choices and unexpected families and the messy, imperfect, beautiful life they were building together. Outside, London carried on. Society would gossip tomorrow about who left Lady Pemberton's ball early and what it meant. Edmund would continue his strange redemption arc. Victoria would eventually remarry someone who hopefully deserved her. The scandal would fade into history, replaced by newer, shinier disasters. But in the quiet library on Belgrave Square, Cordelia had everything she needed. She'd survived. She'd won. She'd built something real from 9 desperate minutes and sheer stubborn determination. And she was done apologizing for it.